if she's criticizing Israel, if she's criticizing foreign aid, if she's criticizing H-1Bs, if she's criticizing the GOP conference, in principle, I'm with her. And if she got punished for that, then I'm with her. The reason I'm actually relieved to see her go is because she is not a principled person.
Nick Fuentes just explained why he's actually happy about Marjorie Taylor Greene's recent decision to resign from Congress at the beginning of next year. And in this clip, he talks about the schism that developed between Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene, describing the latter as an unprincipled person, when many people, myself included, think that she's particularly principled for standing up to Trump on his worst excesses on the Israel First mentality and Epstein cover-up. So let's get right into it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
So Madison Cawthorn, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Greene all have met the same fate. They all got elected to Congress. They stood up against the system, and then they got slapped down. They got pwned. They got slapped down by the machine. They're all MAGA, all pro-Trump, all anti-establishment. They all had their own ideas. They were all famous. They all maybe got a little too big for their britches. Very ambitious, not tactful. Very disruptive, not strategic. And each and every one of them got annihilated by the system. And I imagine most likely that is what happened with Marjorie Greene. I don't think actually this was a strategic move. I don't think this was a tactical move because it makes no sense. If you were going to take on the presidency or some other higher office, you would do so as a congresswoman. And if Trump is crashing and burning, then you can articulate that in your position as a congresswoman or in your campaign. You can run as a survivor. The only reason why you might not want to stick it out is because if you do, they'll have the ability to make it really painful for you. So I'm not buying her explanation. I also don't think this is some segue into a future political run. She might do that later, but I don't think that's the impetus behind this. I imagine she was either threatened or blackmailed. And I think that's the urgency.
Well, that's interesting. That's always possible. I mean, there'd be every amount of incentive for the regime to want to blackmail her. She has objected to unlimited and unconditional aid to Israel. She's wanted to stand up against the president's attempt to cover up the Epstein files for 11 months, using every trick in the book to do it. But it's interesting that Nick says that he doesn't believe the impetus behind this is other political aspirations, because in the last clip that I responded to and released, I believe yesterday it will be by the time you're watching this, he does seem to suggest that. He does seem to suggest that she was upset and angry that she didn't believe that she would be elevated into a cabinet position or be supported for a governorship run or something like that, and maybe even has presidential aspirations in 2028. So to hear him say now in the second part of this video, and watch the full context if you don't agree with me on this, that the opposite, that it's probably blackmail's interesting. I mean, we can always consider all possibilities, but I think that she is principled. I do think that it takes principle to stand up to this president when he has such rigid adherence among his coalition in Congress, outside essentially of the Epstein issue. Almost all of them follow him, even on the Israel issue, as Americans have completely turned away against that. So to me, she is heroic, even if we do have some disagreements, and we do.
I think that explains the timing. She overthrows Trump on Epstein. It's a mutiny. I said it on Monday. I said, don't underestimate what a big deal this is. It's a huge deal. It's a mutiny. And Marjorie and Thomas Massey and Boebert and Mace, they led the charge. And for her to announce her resignation just a few days after that, that's a big deal. So I think she was threatened. I think she was threatened. I think that she was blackmailed. Something happened, but it was made clear to her that if she runs, her political career is going to end. I think that was intimated to her in some way, shape, or form.
Well, that's interesting. I totally agree with Nick that this is something of a mutiny from within the ranks of MAGA and the Republican Congress, for sure. Thomas Massie really being the only pure outsider of those group of four. But at the same time, if they wanted to ruin her because of this opposition, why not ruin her before this came to a vote, before Trump had to yield? Fine, support this bill, release the files, I have nothing to hide, after trying to cover it up for 11 months. Why not do it before that? That part doesn't really make sense to me.
And this is why I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I stand with her in principle. If she's criticizing Israel, if she's criticizing foreign aid, if she's criticizing H-1Bs, if she's criticizing the GOP conference, in principle, I'm with her. And if she got punished for that, then I'm with her. The reason I'm actually relieved to see her go is because she is not a principled person. This is not a principled person at all. She is a craven political opportunist. She is an egomaniac. She just isn't that smart. And, on some level, it's the more the merrier. The more people are saying the message, it's a great thing. But I think that someone like her, I don't trust her. I don't really see her as a viable leader. I don't see her as a leader of men because she is a woman. And I don't think that she actually really took a brave stand at any point in her career. I think that it was popular to support Trump when she supported Trump. I think that it was convenient to support McCarthy when she did that. And I think that when she took up the mantle of dissatisfaction with Trump this year, again, I think that's where the wind was blowing.
Okay, so this betrays something that Nick said in a previous show just this week, where he did give Marjorie Taylor Greene credit for standing with Massie on this issue to prevent Trump from covering up the Epstein files. He actually did give her credit for that. And I'm sorry, that she's dumb just doesn't fly. If someone in Congress votes the way that I want continually, especially on the areas of focus that I do focus on, like the perverted Israel first mentality in Washington, they can be as dumb as they want, but I'd still support that person. And I can't see how you just think she's unprincipled, especially in the last year. If you want to say she's a political opportunist, fine. She was in her past. She did align with McCarthy to get good congressional committee appointments, but in the last year, she isn't. You have to understand that, yeah, that's the wind direction blowing on the part of the culture. The American people are turning against Trump on Epstein and Israel. That's true, but not in Washington. In Washington, that mentality makes her a pariah. She's heroic and principled for doing that within the belly of the beast when the whole party establishment's against her, whether or not that's where the wind's blowing in the populace. Of course it is. Otherwise, you'd see more politicians that are, Machiavellian make the same turn as her. They ultimately did only because Trump said, yeah, vote for it finally, because he knew the gig was up. But she is principled, and she is heroic.
So I don't think she's very principled at all. I don't think she's taken a principled stand in her life. I think she's reactive. She follows the trends. She follows and reacts to things that happen to her. And so I find her to be not only untrustworthy because she lied about me and lied about her relationship with me and lied about her views. So I think she's a liar. I think she's not courageous. She is a follower, a bandwagoner, so she has no principles. She worked with Kevin McCarthy, and if it wasn't for Matt Gaetz, we would still have Kevin McCarthy. And it would have been her fault. When it was convenient, she sold us out and thought she was smart for doing that. And in the end, the only reason she sounds like us or adopted our talking points is because we popularized them, no thanks to her.
So here he goes, classic Nick, for all his merits on the Israel issue, which I do align with. The policy preference he has for cutting completely and decoupling from the Israel first mentality. He takes a personal beef and uses it to say, well, she's just doing this for the wrong reasons. Even though it's aligning completely with my policy preference, she's opposing Israel for the wrong reasons. He's also said this about Candace Owens at times, Tucker Carlson at times, Cenk Uygur at times on that issue, Dave Smith on that issue, Max Blumenthal on that issue. It just seems to drive a wedge between this growing coalition of people that are willing to buck the Republican establishment and Israel first toxic, unholy mentality in Washington, and it doesn't serve any interest. So Nick says, well, it's just political opportunism. That's where the wind's blowing. Would he say that if there was a measure in Congress introduced and every single Republican voted against all aid to Israel for perpetuity? Would he say the same thing? That that's just where the wind's blowing, so we shouldn't care about that? No, I believe that if you really want to undermine the U.S.-Israeli alliance, which has tarnished this country and robbed our sovereignty, you would be applauding that. You wouldn't say, oh, that's just the way the wind's blowing, if that was actually your concern in your heart.
They became popular. No thanks to her. She didn't talk about this stuff. She didn't vote this way. She voted for foreign aid to Israel over and over and over again. She voted for foreign aid to Ukraine until it became unpopular. So good riddance. I agree with Trump. It is great news for the country. And if the loyalty thing is true, loyalty does go both ways. She was not loyal to me. Good riddance. Everybody always wants to be ecumenical. You know, Tucker was telling me, why are you attacking these people? Hey, they attacked me first. He goes, who cares? Okay, so which is it then? I'm the problem for attacking people, but them attacking me is, I should ignore that?
No, I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene did specifically attack Nick Fuentes. I think his beef is with some staffer of hers or something. I don't think that's true. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. I'm open to being wrong on that because I'm not sure. But what I can say that Nick is wrong about here is that Marjorie Taylor Greene has consistently voted against all major aid packages, both to Israel and Ukraine. For her duration in Congress, that is the case. She didn't keep voting for that. That's not substantiated by her voting record whatsoever. And in fact, she became someone that was pointed out for having done that, even with Israel. This was an aberration within the GOP that she didn't do that. And by the way, never collected aid from AIPAC, financing from AIPAC, just like Thomas Massey. She's one of the only few in Washington that is. So Nick is either ignorant of that or repeating falsehoods here because of his personal beef.
No, fuck them. And Marjorie Greene, good riddance. Enjoy your honeymoon with your weird husband at RSBN. Good riddance. You know, and by the way, she's a woman. So I never liked that to begin with. The idea that we were going to be led by a woman was, I'm surprised how many people fell for that. She's the one. She's going to be the leader. She's a woman. No offense. But I'm not about to follow a woman like that. You know, what even is this movement about if it has a woman as its leader? Give me a break.
I mean, it's just crazy. She's not even a leader of that. That's your litmus test? Not whether you accept AIPAC aid, it's whether she's a woman. It's just insane. I don't care. It could be a woman or a man or a transvestite in Washington, in Congress. It could be a tranny voting the same way I wanted, and they'd be a hero. It doesn't matter. She's not a leader. She's not the president. Maybe she'll run for president, but no one looks to Marjorie Taylor Greene and says, yeah, she's the leader. Maybe some people would prefer her for president, certainly so, but it's not even a question of leadership. She's supposed to be a representative. And I know that's idealistic to think that, you know, Congress members aren't in some ways our rulers, just like the president certainly is and the deep state certainly is. But she's a representative that actually cares about the desires of her populace above the Washington swamp. And that's principled, regardless of what sex you are.
So I agree. I mean, I think she's out of place to begin with. She should be home. You know, she divorced her husband. She got remarried. There's some weird affair going on there, some weirdo stuff going on there. Her husband, her new boyfriend from RSBN, is always posting pictures of them fucking hugging and kissing. Hey, nobody wants to see that, man. Aren't you guys both 60? Nobody wants to see a couple of 60-year-old crusty boomers making out. It's just kind of gross to look at, for crying out loud.
Okay, it isn't an affair. She's in a relationship with someone that started, I think, the year after she got divorced. But that's not an affair anywhere where I come from. It just seems like the bitterness is seething out of Nick. upon one of the most courageous congresswomen in my lifetime, one of the most courageous congressmen in general in my lifetime. And it's tarnishing what was a principled stand against Trump's worst excesses, especially in spending, Epstein, and the Israel issue. That's just what's the truth.
Anyway, so I'm actually glad about the development. And you know what? You got to fight it out. I mean, look, either she got threatened or blackmailed and she's bowing out and who knows what's being told to her, or she's dropping out because she's weak. You got to stick it out. She goes, I don't want to be a battered wife waiting for things to get better. Why did you get elected to Congress then?
That criticism, I think, is fair, actually. I think that was the worst part of her resignation, calling herself a battered wife. It's like, no, you just triumphed in a minority faction within your own party over the president, which is popular in your own party. You're not a battered wife. You're actually a valorous soldier right now. Like, this is an incredible timing to resign from Congress. If you ask me, that's what confounded me the most, because she just stood with a small phalanx of true America First warriors in the Republican Party against Trump's attempt to cover up Epstein, and then portrayed herself as a battered wife. If you ask me, that was her worst mistake. It just looks bad optically, and you do have to suffer the slings and arrows when you're a congressman. You know, Thomas Massie feels it every day too. There's only a few people in the world that can probably handle that. That's true. That is a given. I'll concede that. But still, she's not a battered wife. Like, she's a hero to a lot of people right now.
You get elected to Congress to fight, to represent. And isn't that her whole deal? Is that she's fighting for the people. I'm a fighter. I'm a truth teller. I'm doing this. Oh, and then it gets a little bit difficult. Then it gets a little bit hard. You've been there for 4 years. You've been there for 4 years, almost 5 years now. Couldn't hack it. That's why I'm so, at the end of the day, there was a critique of me many years ago where people said that I was hurting Congress people's careers. Their careers mean nothing compared to this movement because, and I used to tell people in private, people like Marjorie Greene come and go. It's a revolving door. You think you're a big shot because you're working in a congressional office? You're not. These people are disposable. They come, they go. They rely on donations. They're not inspiring. They're not even that smart. If they can lay down their career to confer legitimacy upon this movement, it'll be the most productive thing they've ever done.
Well, I think it's just ridiculous to think that the resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene would aid a movement designed to undermine Israeli influence in the U.S. government and the unholy alliance between the U.S. government and Israel and all that it comes with. The wars, the bankrolling of genocides, the inflation, the debt, $38 trillion in debt, just the warped mindset that it requires to prioritize that regime in the Middle East above the United States. And by the way, when it's not politically correct to even, criticize that regime as much as it is to criticize like an individual U.S. state, it's so absurd. And I just think it's so backward to say that this helps the movement that Nick Fuentes purports to lead, a movement that is designed to rid the U.S. of Israeli influence. It doesn't help that whatsoever by getting, Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Congress and applauding that and being happy with that development. It's just so stupid, and I really do think that this is just the extension of personal animosity he has with her over unrelated issues, letting that seep into the merits that she has. Because I promise you, if I got into a personal beef with a congresswoman or a congressman that happened to vote in every single direction in my preference on foreign policy, I'd still be like, well, we had a beef, but that's awesome. They're heroic in that aspect. They're heroic in the aspect that I spend many hours on my own program talking about. So no one benefits, no one in America First truly benefits from Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning from Congress. I don't think that he can convince even many of his own audience members of that. I don't think he can convince all the groypers of that. She is seen as a unique figure in this movement. I'm with him when he says that no individual is more important than the movement, but she seems to align with what his priorities within his own movement are. On H-1Bs, on aid to Israel, on the Epstein cover-up, on things like that. But you're just going to taint her and tarnish her because she's flows with the wind? Well, she votes the way that her constituents want and that Americans want. When you properly notify people that Americans are turning away from this nonsense, it's a good thing. That's a reflection of their actual interests rather than the lobbied and politically connected interests in Washington. It's a good thing we should all celebrate. So yeah, I'm not with Nick on this one. I think the few points that he made where I do align with, including the battered wife thing, I think that was bad messaging and optically bad for her in general, is totally outweighed by her heroism, her courage to stand alone, essentially, but with Massey mostly, in the face of Republican tyranny and Republican spending, Republican duplicity, Republican wars, Republican corporate welfare, when so many other of her peers in Congress wouldn't do that. They wouldn't dare stand in front of Trump and oppose him on that. But what do you guys think? Do you think I'm right? Do you think Nick's right? Is this a good development for America first that Marjorie Taylor Greene's leaving Congress? Or do you think that she is principled, especially in the last year or two, as I do? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to, or also consider becoming a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below. If you do that, you can help support the channel, which I'll really appreciate. And in return for that gesture, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. Also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. Plug in your email at that site. I'll shoot you a free PDF of my first book, no cost, no obligation, just because you're a nice and awesome viewer. Until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.